Okay, strap yourselves in,
Yeah.
folks, because today's deep dive is going to be a wild one. We're going deep into the world of Chet Hanks.
Chet Hanks, yeah, what a fascinating figure. He's like this walking contradiction, right? Constantly blurring the lines between like genuine self-expression and this calculated attention seeking.
Yep.
It really makes you wonder, is he a visionary or just really good at grabbing headlines?
That's exactly what we're here to figure out. We've got articles, social media posts, even Wikipedia entries, and it's all jumbled up between Chet's own words and how the public reacts to him. It's crazy how much we see is real and how much of it is just, a carefully crafted persona.
That's the million-dollar question, right? And to even begin to answer it, we got to go back to the beginning, Chet. Born Chester Marlin Hanks back in 1990. Son of, well, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson talk about a legacy to live up to or maybe rebel against, who knows?
Born with a silver spoon, that's for sure. But it wasn't all like red carpets and Hollywood premieres. Chet actually went and studied theater at Northwestern University, even pledged a fraternity.
Yeah, you wouldn't really expect that given his, well, let's just say unconventional image later on. It's almost like he was trying to fit in, be a normal college kid before he, embraced his more controversial side.
There's this story from when Chet was a kid that I think really, sheds light on how he felt about his famous last name. He was playing Foursquare and beat some kid. And the kid was furious, yelling that Chet only won because his dad is Tom Hanks. Imagine that, realizing your privilege before you even hit puberty.
Wow, that's got to be a powerful moment, right? This early realization that your last name can open doors, but it also, comes with scrutiny and judgment. Like he was being judged before he could even define himself.
That feels like a recurring theme throughout his life when you say, look at his acting career. He's had roles in shows like Shameless, Empire, even Your Honor. And he got a part in The Surreal Life. Not exactly a struggling actor, is he?
No, not at all. He's had opportunities most aspiring actors would kill for. But he hasn't quite reached, the same level of acclaim as his father. So it makes you wonder, is he deliberately trying to be different, rebelling against the whole America's dad image?
He's like the anti-Tom Hanks, right? Intentionally choosing roles and projects that are edgy, provocative, controversial, almost like he's screaming, "I'm not my father."
And nowhere is that more obvious than in his music career, rapping under the name Chet Hayes, and let's be honest, it's caused quite a stir. Remember when he started using a Jamaican accent in his music?
Yeah.
The cultural appropriation accusations flew left and right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He defended himself, saying it was about adopting a vibe, not mocking a race, even comparing it to, snowboarding culture. But come on, Chet, really?
Yeah, it felt tone deaf and sensitive, and it sparked a huge debate. It was like he was trying so hard to be something he wasn't, and it totally backfired.
And then, of course, we have to talk about probably his most infamous moment. The White Boy Summer campaign. Summer 2021. Chet declares it White Boy Summer, launches merch, the whole 9 yards. What was he thinking?
I know, it's mind-boggling, right? He initially framed it as, a celebration of fly white boys who love beautiful queens of every race. But it just came across as so tone-deaf and racially insensitive.
And then, to make things even worse, far-right groups started using the phrase, twisting it into something dark and hateful. Suddenly, Chet's fun summer slogan was being used to promote bigotry and division.
It just shows you how a seemingly harmless idea, especially when someone with a platform amplifies it, can have these unintended and sometimes dangerous consequences.
Chet eventually came out and condemned the whole twisted interpretation of it, saying he was ignorant and urging people to just spread love. But the damage was done. You really have to question his judgment, his awareness of the power of his words,
And it all circles back to that central question, doesn't it? Is Chet just a visionary who's misunderstood? Or is he a master of, stirring the pot to stay relevant? Is he really trying to express himself? Or is he intentionally courting controversy?
It's a tough one to call. On the one hand, he seems sincere, even a bit naive. But then you have these moments where it feels so calculated, like he's pushing buttons on purpose.
Exactly. That's what makes him so fascinating and frustrating at the same time. He's so hard to pin down.
Well, and speaking of hard to pin down, we can't ignore Chet's struggles with substance abuse. This is where things take a darker turn. He's been incredibly open about his past cocaine and crack use, which is a far cry from the squeaky clean image associated with his family.
It's a reminder that behind the fame and fortune, behind the carefully crafted online personas, there are real people struggling with real demons. And in Chet's case, those demons were very, very real.
He's even said that he was so deep into his addiction that his parents sent him to a wilderness program in Utah. Imagine being Tom Hanks' son and ending up in rehab. Talk about pressure.
It must have been incredibly difficult for him and his family, too. It's a reminder that addiction doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone, regardless of their background or privilege.
Thankfully, he's celebrating 2 years of sobriety now, saying his daughter and a newfound religious devotion are what helped him turn his life around.
Which is amazing. It takes a lot of courage to confront your demons and commit to recovery. And it seems like Chet's found a new path, a new purpose. Or has he?
That's the question, isn't it? Is this newfound spirituality genuine? Or is it another act? Is he truly transformed, or is this just another chapter in the Chet Hanks saga?
We'll have to wait and see. But one thing's for sure, this journey of his, from privilege to addiction to recovery, is definitely a compelling one. And it's only getting more complicated from here.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about his personal life for a second. He has a daughter, Micah, born in 2016 with his former partner, Tiffany Miles. He says Micah is a major reason for his sobriety. He didn't want to be an absentee father.
That's great to hear, of course. But his relationship history is, well, let's just say it's been a bit messy. He had this very public and volatile relationship with his ex-girlfriend, Kiana Parker, with assault accusations and restraining orders filed by both of them.
Oh, yeah, that was a tough situation. It's important to note that those are just allegations, not proven facts. But it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole Chet Hanks puzzle.
For sure. And then there was that awkward flirtation with Kim Zolciak on The Surreal Life. Remember when he called her a MILF on camera? Cringeworthy, to say the least.
He later said it was a joke, but it definitely raised eyebrows.
Yeah.
It seems like Chet has a way of, saying and doing things that cross the line, then backpedaling and saying it was all in good fun.
There's a pattern there, isn't there? It makes you wonder, is he being intentionally provocative? Is he just clueless? Or is it some weird mix of both?
It's like he's always testing boundaries, pushing limits, seeing how far he can go.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk about Chet's jump into the world of fitness and life coaching with Hanks Fit. Now, this is where things get really interesting.
A journalist actually hired Chet to be his personal life coach and wrote about the whole experience. Talk about a deep dive. And what he found was, well, let's just say it was pretty unconventional.
4:30 a.m. wake-up calls, mandatory burpees, transcendental meditation, you name it. It's like he crammed every wellness trend into one intense program.
The workouts were brutal, both physically and mentally, but also kind of half-baked, like he was relying a lot on some generic fitness app. Makes you wonder if Chet's just slapping his name on something pre-made and calling it his own.
Right, and it raises questions about the whole program. Is it even legit? Is it effective? Especially considering Chet doesn't have any formal training in fitness or coaching.
That's what's so fascinating about Chet. He seems to always be reinventing himself, jumping from one thing to the next, relying on his personal experiences and charisma more than actual qualifications.
He's capitalizing on his name recognition, his brand, to create this image of expertise. But is that enough? Does passion and personal experience actually make you qualified to coach others?
It's a slippery slope. On one hand, you got to admire his hustle, his willingness to put himself out there, even if it means getting criticized. But then you have to wonder, is he taking advantage of people who are looking for guidance and support?
It's the classic visionary versus con artist dilemma. Is he genuinely trying to help, or is he exploiting people's insecurities for his own benefit?
It's a blurry line, for sure. And it gets even more complicated when you factor in Chet's coaching style. The journalist said those one-on-one coaching calls were very emotionally driven, with Chet talking about his past traumas and encouraging his clients to do the same.
That's interesting. He's really leaning into this vulnerability, this open book approach. Is that genuine empathy, or is it a tactic to build trust and intimacy, maybe even make his clients more susceptible to his influence? It's tough to say. It could be that he's projecting his own need for connection and validation onto his clients. Or maybe he truly believes that sharing his story will help others heal and grow.
Either way, it's a risky move, especially with how sensitive these issues are. Is he actually equipped to handle the emotional baggage that comes with this deep personal sharing? Does he even have the training and expertise to guide his clients through such complex emotional stuff?
It's definitely a valid concern. And remember, the journalist actually ended up stopping their coaching relationship early, calling it a failure.
Yeah, he said Chet was stuck in these false realities, clinging to narratives that were holding him back both personally and professionally.
It's almost like he's trapped in this constant state of reinvention, always seeking external validation, but never really dealing with the core issues.
Which again brings up that question, is this a genuine desire for growth and self-improvement, or is it all just a performance? Is he playing a role even to himself? It's a tough question to answer. But one thing's for sure, Chet's journey is a fascinating look into the complexities of fame, privilege, and this constant pressure to prove yourself.
Absolutely. He's this walking contradiction. A privileged kid constantly trying to rebel against that privilege. A charismatic guy who's somehow both endearing and off-putting. A self-proclaimed visionary who might just be a master manipulator.
And that's what makes him so compelling. He keeps us guessing.
Yeah.
He challenges our perceptions.
All right.
He forces us to confront our own biases.
He is a mirror reflecting the anxieties and aspirations of our time. The desire for authenticity, the craving for connection, the struggle to find meaning in a world full of superficiality and instant gratification.
He's a product of his environment, shaped by the expectations and pressures of being a Hanks, but also driven by this internal turmoil, this desire to break free and make his own way.
And it's in that tension, that back and forth between privilege and rebellion, between authenticity and performance, that we might find the answer to the question, Chet Hanks, grifter or gifted?
We're getting closer to figuring this enigma out, but we're not there yet. Stick with us as we keep exploring the many layers of Chet Hanks in part 2 of the deep dive.
And we're back, folks, for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of Chet Hanks. We left off talking about his, let's say, unconventional jump into the world of fitness and life coaching with Hanks Fit, which, let's be honest, raised a few eyebrows.
It's like he did a complete 180 from those cultural appropriation controversies straight into self-improvement, but with his own unique, some might even say questionable, approach.
Yeah, and remember, we're trying to figure out, is this guy legit or just really good at rebranding himself? So let's dig into this whole Hanks Fit thing. This journalist who actually hired Chet was basically thrown into this crazy routine, wake up at 4:30 in the morning, pray, do burpees, meditate, all before even hitting the gym.
Geez, can you imagine being woken up before the sun's even up and forced to do burpees while you're still half asleep? I can't picture Tom Hanks doing burpees at 4:30 a.m. It's like Chet's trying to be the anti-Hanks, even with fitness.
It's definitely not your typical morning yoga session on the beach, that's for sure. And these weren't just any workouts. They were described as grueling, really physically and mentally demanding.
But here's the thing. The journalist also said the workouts felt kind of half-baked, like they relied heavily on this generic fitness app. Makes you wonder if Chet's just slapping his name on some pre-made program and calling it his own creation.
That's a really good point. It definitely raises some red flags about how legit and effective his program really is. Is he even qualified to be coaching people, especially when you consider he doesn't have any formal training in fitness or coaching?
It's the Chet Hanks paradox, right?
Yeah.
He's always reinventing himself, jumping from one thing to the next, relying more on his personal experiences and charisma than any actual credentials.
He's definitely using his name recognition, his brand, to project this image of expertise. But is that really enough? Can passion and personal experience actually make you a qualified coach?
That's a tough question. On one hand, you gotta admire his hustle, his willingness to just go for it, even if it means facing criticism. But on the other hand, you have to wonder if he's taking advantage of people who are looking for real guidance and support.
It's like the classic visionary versus con artist debate. Is he genuinely trying to help people, or is he just using their insecurities for his own gain?
It's a fine line, for sure.
Yeah.
And it gets even more complicated when you think about Chet's coaching style. The journalist said those one-on-one coaching calls were super emotionally driven, with Chet talking about his own past traumas and encouraging his clients to do the same.
It's interesting that he's leaning so heavily into this vulnerability, this open book approach. Is that true empathy, or is it some calculated tactic to build trust and intimacy, maybe make his clients more likely to be influenced by him?
It's hard to say for sure. It could be that he's projecting his own need for connection and validation onto his clients. Or maybe he really believes that sharing his story will help others heal and grow.
Either way, it's a risky move, especially when you consider how sensitive these issues can be. Is he really equipped to handle the emotional baggage that comes with this kind of deep personal sharing? Does he even have the training and expertise to guide his clients through such complex emotional stuff?
It's a valid concern, for sure. And remember, the journalist actually ended up cutting their coaching relationship short, calling it a failure.
Yeah, he said Chet was stuck in these false realities, clinging to narratives that were holding him back, both personally and professionally.
It's almost like he's trapped in this constant cycle of reinvention, always searching for external validation, but never really addressing those core issues.
Which brings us back to that question, is this a genuine desire to grow and improve, or is it all just an act? Is he playing a role, even to himself?
It's a tough one to answer. But what's clear is that Chet's journey is a fascinating look into the complexities of fame, privilege, and the constant pressure to prove yourself.
He's this walking contradiction, isn't he? A privileged kid constantly rebelling against that privilege. A charismatic guy who somehow manages to be both endearing and off-putting. A self-proclaimed visionary who might just be a master manipulator.
That's what makes him so captivating. He keeps you guessing, challenges your perceptions, forces you to confront your own biases.
He's like a mirror reflecting our own anxieties and aspirations. The need to be authentic, the hunger for connection, the struggle to find meaning in a world that's so focused on superficiality and instant gratification.
He's a product of his environment, no doubt, shaped by the expectations and pressures of being a Hanks, but also driven by this internal conflict, this urge to break free and forge his own path.
And it's in that tension, that constant push and pull between privilege and rebellion, between authenticity and performance, that we might just find the answer to the ultimate question. Chet Hanks, grifter or gifted?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We've talked about his controversies, his struggles, how he keeps reinventing himself, but there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't really looked at yet, his family.
It's a big piece, for sure. You can't really understand Chet without understanding the legacy he's both embracing and rebelling against. The weight of that Hanks name, the expectations, the comparisons, it's all there in his journey.
It's the classic story of the celebrity kid trying to get out from under their famous parent's shadow. But with Chet, it feels more complicated, more deliberate, you know?
Yeah, for sure. There's this real intention to be different, to shock people, to provoke them. Like he's saying, look, I'm not just Tom Hanks' son, I'm Chet Hanks and you're gonna see me.
He's even said that growing up with such famous parents wasn't always easy. He talked about feeling like he was always being watched, judged, compared to his dad all the time.
Yeah.
It can't be easy when your dad is America's dad, right? The pressure must be insane.
Can you imagine that constant pressure, that feeling like you always have to prove yourself to create your own identity? No wonder he's gone to such lengths to set himself apart.
And there's this one story he told about getting caught smoking weed by his mom, Rita Wilson. Apparently, she totally flipped out, and Chet even did an impression of her freaking out during an interview.
It kind of paints a picture of a strict upbringing, a stark contrast to the rebellious path he chose later on. It's almost like he was pushing back against this idea of his family being perfect, the goody two-shoes image they had.
But here's the interesting part. Even with all the rebellion, the controversies, the shocking behavior, Chet says his parents have always supported him. He insists they never gave up on him, even when he was struggling with addiction.
He said they never judged him, that they stood by him through it all. And it sounds like they really did. Remember that crazy Instagram video he posted back in 2015 where he admitted to being addicted to coke and crack?
Oh yeah, that was a huge deal. It was like everyone was thinking, Tom Hanks' son doing crack. No
Right.
way.
But it seems like Tom and Rita never stopped loving and supporting him, no matter what. According to people close to the family, Tom Hanks was devastated seeing his son struggling. But he never gave up hope. He even sent Chet to that wilderness program in Utah, the one Chet says helped him turn things around.
It really shows the power of a parent's love. Even when their child makes choices they don't understand, that love never goes away.
It makes you think, right? Maybe part of Chet's rebellious streak, his need to shock and push buttons, comes from this deep down need to test that love, to see if it really is unconditional.
It's a fascinating idea. Maybe he needs that reassurance, that constant confirmation that he's loved, even when he's not being the best version of himself.
And now that he's been sober for a couple of years, he's talked about how much he appreciates his father, acknowledging the sacrifices Tom made to help him get his life back on track.
It sounds like they have a new understanding and respect for each other, a recognition of the challenges they've both faced. It's like they've come full circle, from rebellion and resentment to reconciliation and respect.
Maybe that's the key to understanding Chet Hanks. He's not just a grifter or a gifted person. He's a complicated guy trying to figure out his place in the world, dealing with family, fame, and finding his own identity.
He's just trying to make sense of it all like everyone else. He's messed up, he's hurt people, he's said and done things that were wrong, but he's also shown real vulnerability, moments of self-reflection, a desire to be better.
So where does that leave us? Is Chet Hanks a visionary or a con artist? I don't think there's an easy answer. He's a product of his upbringing, shaped by privilege and burdened by expectations, but also driven by this internal need for authenticity and purpose.
And that's the tricky part, isn't it? Trying to figure out who someone really is, underneath all the layers, the carefully crafted image, the public perception.
Especially nowadays when social media lets us create our own narratives to present the version of ourselves we want the world to see.
So what's the takeaway from all this, from our deep dive into the world of Chet Hanks? Maybe it's a reminder that people aren't just black and white, good or bad. We're all shades of gray, complicated and contradictory, capable of amazing things and terrible things.
Maybe the real lesson is to be careful about judging too quickly, to resist putting labels on people, to remember that there's always more to the story than we see on the surface.
Everyone has their own journey, their own struggles, their own successes and failures. And maybe by listening to Chet's story, by trying to understand what motivates him, his complexities, we can learn to be a little more empathetic, both towards ourselves and others.
What are your thoughts after this deep dive? Has your opinion of Chet Hanks changed at all? We encourage you to keep thinking about it, to look at the information we've presented critically, and to come to your own conclusions.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this exploration into the world of Chet Hanks, a world that's both fascinating and frustrating. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.